November the 25th, 2024. Guys, you're looking at an article coming in this afternoon. This is from Russia. This image is also, and it's right near an airfield. It may be, but what has happened? If you remember, a few days ago, Ukraine launched U.S. missiles into Russia. Then I think they launched some British-made missiles in. Then Russia cluster bombed them right after that. Then it got quiet for a day or two. I think they were kind of backing up and seeing what was going on as far as NATO and the U.S. But now this afternoon, or it's dark there now, but it says World War III watch. Ukraine fires U.S.-made ATACMs, missiles with cluster munitions against Kalino airfield in Russia's Kursk region. That's what you're seeing, this line of fire back here. Remember the missiles that Russia hit Ukraine with that were cluster like that? You just saw them line up. Now, this is showing explosions. It's not showing what actually came down from the clouds, but it caught it at this point. You can see the clouds are glowing, but again, that may just be the moment the picture was taken, but they're saying it is cluster ammunition, So what will Russia do now? They've been hit inside Russia, one of their airfields, again, the Kalino airfield, and are we right on the edge of it? I've noticed that, a lot of people in conservative media have been talking about the possibility of World War III coming in, or very powerful international war. And now we're starting to see in the last few days, not just alternative media like you're seeing here at the Gateway Pundit, but on some of the more mainstream systems. And that concerns me, because usually when the mainstream media is involved, they're pushing an agenda. So you have to be careful with that. It says, in another dangerous escalation in the war in Ukraine, the Kiev regime has fired long-range U.S.-made ATAC missiles into Russian territory again. This time, the attacks appear to have centered around the area of the Kalino airfield. This is the third time Ukraine shoots NATO-supplied and authorized missiles into Russian territory. Is it going to be a three-strike and you're out situation here? Now, it started out, remember that they were saying that Russia had launched ICBMs, and I said that in the video because that was what was coming out in their articles, and then they started saying it was a mid-range ballistic missile called Hazel. It says, and that's what Russia responded that strike with, was mid-range ballistic hypersonic missiles. You can't shoot them down, and they had the multiple warheads, and they looked devastating. It seemed like the escalation might cool down for a bit, although Russia did attack Kyiv and other regions with the usual Shahed geranium drones. But today it has been reported the arrival last night of 5, some say 6, ATACM missiles with cluster warheads, again in the vicinity of the Kalino airfield in the Kursk region. Now, there's two different videos here, again, Gateway Pundit. I will put this link below. I'm not going to show you that. I don't want to get copyright a strike on me that way. But they're saying that 6 ATACMs have arrived at Kalino Air Base in Kursk. Its infrastructure was employed to launch Shaheds 136 and reconnaissance UAV drones against Ukraine. There's a picture there. Then it says footage shows ATACMs cluster munitions hitting the airfield in the Kursk region. And I think you saw a section of that. But the video here looks like it's from a different angle. And you can see it kind of behind the trees, maybe from a neighborhood. But it says, according to Russian sources, 8 ATACMs were launched overnight. Strikes reportedly also hit an S-400 position, attempted to repel the attack, or attempting to. And I think that, again, an air defense system, the S-400. Now, the back and forth between Ukraine and Russia is Russia saying that they fired 8, but they took down 7. So the image could be of one of the multi-cluster rockets. I'm not sure there. But it says the arrival of 5 ATACMS missiles with cluster warheads in the vicinity of the airfield. Footage was published by Ukrainian channels show the work of M74 submunitions covering a significant area of destruction. That's the airfield. It says at night, the Ukrainians hit the airfield in Kursk. Again, they're saying they shot down 7 out of the 8. We may never know about that. They definitely took a hit, and now it's kind of like 10 minutes till midnight at this point, guys, and we know who's pushing this. It's NATO, and it's the world global leaders that want to push the world into war, keeping it in war so that the military-industrial complex is propped up with plenty of money. That's what all of this is about. So we just depends now on the patience of Putin. How long will he take it before he hits a major area? You know, we have an air base in Poland. We have a base, I think, in the UK. We have one in Germany. There's many bases that he could hit without hitting the continental U.S. And so I don't know how that's going to work out, guys. I'm just bringing this to you because we're getting very close to some pretty bad situations. And what's going to happen? Think about this. If we have a strike here, and more than likely, I think, because we're such a densely populated area, unlike Ukraine, that there probably will take communications down first with some type of EMP device exploded in upper atmosphere. And that would do the widest damage. And what would that do at that point, guys? It would create chaos. You wouldn't be able to buy anything that used a cash register or an ATM or anything like that because you wouldn't have the power to do it. So there would be instant chaos of people trying to rush. Now, pay attention to what I'm telling you. This is important. It's as important as if they were to hit us. What's going to happen in the next 3 days at that point? Because there's a video out this guy was talking about. They were preparing military pilots, I think, for Vietnam, and they had to go through some very rigorous training, kind of like the SEALs, but they were dropped offshore out in the Gulf of Mexico with parachutes, and as if a plane as if they had to eject from a plane that had been hit or a helicopter or something. So they had to land in the ocean. They blew up a big raft for 7 of them, I think it was, and they got to shore. Then they had to go wade through a Florida swamp and survive. They didn't have any supplies. Now, they had their weapons with them, but no food. I'm sure they probably had a little bit of water, maybe some rationing, but they talked like they didn't have anything because it was an immediate event. In other words, this trial was, could you survive in the jungle if you were shot down in combat? Well, he was talking about the first couple of days were okay, but by the end of the 3rd day, hunger had set in with and these are trained guys, had set in with them, and they started becoming almost hostile with one another. They were on this little section of land. It wasn't hardly anything to eat. I think they ended up shooting something and eating it, but it wasn't enough for all of them. And he said then they started growling at one another. In other words, it was breaking down. The primal instinct was pulling forward at 3 days. Now, these guys were trained to handle rough stuff. What do you think is going to happen to, let's say here in America, one of the most overweight places on the planet, when after 3 days here? And of course, you guys, most of you that watch our videos, have prepared. That's not a big deal, and that's not why I'm coming here. Because that will be, in certain situations, as dangerous as not being prepared. But of course you want to be. And the reason I say that is after 3 days, your friends and your neighbors will start kicking in that primal instinct. Now, that would be 3 days after you can't get food. The stores have been closed and ramped through, and everything's been bought up in a mad rush. There's nothing there, right? What will happen, especially if they think you guys are doing good next door, because it appears that you're not walking up and down the street looking for food. You seem to be fat and happy, fat and sassy. You know what I'm talking about, right? What are you going to do at that point when they come knocking and say, my kids are hungry and we know you got food and we want it? What are you going to do? There'll be 2 scenarios. One was that they'll knock at first, or they'll knock and have a couple people there with ammunition and weapons. what will you do at that point? So you can't just think, well, and I can't either. Excuse me. Can't just think, well, I've got, a few months worth of food saved up and that type of stuff, water filtration, whatever it is. You want something with shelf life if you can get it. And so you don't want anybody to know about it at first. You want to have those things. But you may want them to be hidden very well and no one know about it. And then you got to appear just as hungry as anybody else. You understand what I'm saying? And you wouldn't want it right there and buried in your yard, I don't think. You wouldn't want a mini warehouse because those would be the first places or second places rated after the food's gone. Now, the cities would be much worse, but this will move. And guys, I think it's planned to create an unorthodox type of civil war where it's not Democrat against Republican or left versus right. It's going to be those with food and those without. And so think about that. They want something to happen before the inauguration comes in January, right? Well, we talked about the different scenarios of that happening. But as soon as something big happens, I was reading an article today, and the BRICS nations, especially through the Middle East, are ready to cut the dollar off in a minute's notice. Their entire systems are set up in place. China, Russia, Brazil, you name it. They are ready to push that button. What's going to happen? We here in America, not us, not you and I, but the demons have printed out way too much money, spent and wasted way too much money, and that money is circulated around the world right now. But soon as BRICS takes over, all of that paper money around the world, which would be called back, will be worthless. It won't even be worth toilet paper, guys. So these globalists, the world leaders, they have plan A and plan B. If they can't kick it off with Russia, will it be caused by the BRICS suddenly turning? They don't have to turn against us because we're involved with the Russian situation. But many countries now are on Russia's and China's side, guys. The infrastructure is being built up in many countries by China. Russia's involved in some of that too. But they're not destroying countries like our nation is overseas, causing a war in Ukraine and Russia, and probably having a lot to do with the conflict in Israel right now. Helping the Israelis on one side, then you find out they sent millions to Hamas on the other hand. But either way, if the BRICS collapse the dollar overnight, that's what they'll do. And it's coming very quickly. They're tired of everything going on. And if Russia decides to really hit hard, they may not drop a nuke in it. They don't have to. They could disrupt the U.S. by simply knocking out the power and communication grids. Then, under the circumstances I'm describing here, the 3 days of the collapse of the BRICS, then they can sit back and watch the country tear itself apart. And guys, that cannot be stopped. Think about it. Because right now, it's almost as if you don't have much food because of the price of food. And the quality has gotten bad, and the shortages have gotten immense. And you hear more and more about recalls, and I wouldn't doubt a lot of those recalls end up in some underground bunkers. For not us, we're not invited to that little party, guys. But what are you going to do? It's a question to me and to you. What are you going to do after 3 days and you see the people starting to wander around in the street and stuff? They can't really get much gas for their vehicles, can't buy gas at the stations. They've been running their gas out, driving to town, looking for food and supplies. I saw that happen here in Katrina with 2 weeks of no electricity and no water. I saw it. But we could drive north and get some supplies. A lot of people load up in one car because there wasn't much gas, wait in the line to get some gas and maybe get some groceries up north around Jackson in that area. But in this situation, it will be nowhere to drive to unless you start hearing on some radios that survived or some radio stations or TV stations that there are FEMA camps set up willing and ready to feed you and house you. All you got to do is just make that little trip. It won't cost you a thing. It's a cheap date. It's a one-way ticket, though. But ask yourselves, and I want to hear in the comments, what would you do under either or both of those situations on the third day? Let that resonate, because that is coming regardless if we're right or wrong about any war or anything else. If they're bankrupting the country, and we still have 2 months almost before the inauguration to even make it to that point. We may not even make it to the inauguration, because if they drive Russia, and that's what they're trying to do, poke that bear into making a deep strike here. They're going to hit Europe too, by the way, if they strike us. But one way or the other, they're going to create this chaos. They don't need the Democrats fighting the Republicans again, guys. Just think about it. And what would you do? You need to sit down and decide. You need to think this thing out. If I've ever told you anything that's worth a drop in the bucket, this is it. If you can't ignore it. You can say, man, I'll think about it tomorrow, and that's fine. Get your pen and paper. Write some ideas down. Think about where you may can stash some stuff that maybe only you would know about. And, you know, you'd have to dig up a few 5-gallon buckets or whatever. But it is not a joke. So it's up to you now. We are very close. We're getting down to that midnight time, and the greatest threat now will be, now, everyone will survive if you have an initial EMP attack up in the upper atmosphere, except for there's going to be some crashes with power going out, red lights, trains, whatever, right? There's going to be some initial fatalities. And then it may be a week before you see the 3-day set in, because people may have a week's worth of food in their homes. Unless you have some backup solar power or something like that, your fridges are not going to make it. So it better be canned food, dry goods, things like that. But you better decide, because that's what they want to happen. Why have they stocked up all of their bunkers? Millions and billions of dollars worth of stuff, and I guarantee you, some of the recall beef and other things like that, wasn't anything wrong with it. And guys, every day we see something about another recall, and they're slaughtering again the animals here. That's demonic, and it's in the very essence of what I just said is demonic, slaughtering the animals. But they don't want you to eat. They want to drive us to the 3-day massacre. It's going to be like The Walking Dead, except these people will be running, and some of them will be armed. It won't be a slow walk. We're watching it, guys. Let me know in the comments. Everybody pay attention to what the comments are saying on this video, whether it's tonight or tomorrow, whenever. And look at the different ideas you're seeing. Formulate your own plan. Don't wait till it's too late, and then you can say, well, what's happening? Well, there's power just went out. Hell's going to break loose then if you see it mass out. And that's one thing I'm going to say about, I'm glad that we changed from AT&T and to go to Starlink with our internet that I'm using now. Not only have I went from 25 megs to 256 megs download, but I have solar power. And even if you just had the solar power in a small inverter in your automobile, they make a smaller dish than what I have. They make one that's about the size of a notebook paper it's called a mini. But with any kind of power, you can talk with anyone else in the world. You don't need electricity, because it's coming from satellites, like a satellite phone, right? So that may be a really handy thing to happen. And once you get your equipment, then you're not under a contract. We have it on our channel, guys. And it's there as much as to help folks with as it is to help our channel. The same reason we only have survival food, water filtration, and things like that listed there. And go there and check out. Tina puts up new pets that need help before they're euthanized every day or so. So check that out too. But we're watching it, guys. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe. Let's watch the comments.